Now that you're doing more of your self-work and gaining more awareness, you're beginning to realize the codependent nature of your relationship. So it's really good to have this awareness and now bring the practice of noticing in your relationship, say in arguments, when things get heated up, to notice how that plays out and what you're making it mean, right? So getting better at noticing yourself go into a wound, right? And it's the abandonment wound that's really at the core of all of our challenges in relationships with others. But in the relationship with your significant other, when it comes to when something comes up, conflict, argument comes up, to notice yourself. And where do you go? Is it towards neediness, or is it towards the sense of I don't need you, F you, right? And to be willing to work on getting good at catching yourself in it so that you are not unnecessarily escalating the heatedness, the argument, right? The projection that takes place in arguments, right? Like you may do something that may cause your partner to get angry at you, and then you're feeling their anger, right? And that can be very triggering. It can cause you to feel unsafe. So then what happens? Do you push back? Do you go to that place of, I don't need you, or F this, or F you, right? And then be willing to reflect on the past arguments and patterns, and then just work on getting better at not getting better at not going to those levels, just making progress so that you yourself can be willing to catch you and support you in those moments, to be willing to learn nonviolent communication, right? To express when something feels really intense or a reaction is feeling really hurtful or painful or very triggering. And to be willing, for example, to experiment, to take space. And it is about experimentation because we're all different. Each couple is different, the dynamic is different, where the other person is on their growth journey, on their inner work journey, how conscious they are in arguments, for example. But it's about doing the work with yourself, right? In those situations of getting better and better at knowing what you need in that moment and giving it to yourself, right? And then being able to communicate from that place of supporting yourself rather than, if you will, letting loose or letting, say, the mind or the egoic mind take over and just pushing right back the anger that or misunderstanding that you feel or the projection that you feel is being, you know, directed towards you, and completely allowing the reactions to take over, right? Because it's very addictive too, the chaotic pattern. Because as children, if we experience chaos, witnessing our parents or in our home environment, that's actually becomes addictive because our nervous system is used to it. So it keeps recreating situations later in life, into our adult life, that it knows, that it seems familiar, right? So it's the willingness to practice, gaining greater awareness of this, and then changing the pattern to realize that when you're feeling unsafe, and to giving yourself that support, to doing what you need to support yourself in that moment, to get better and better at communicating with your partner, and over time practicing more and more nonviolent communication, in that it's not about pointing the finger at them, right? And just completely putting the fault on the other, but to take responsibility for yourself in the relationship, in that particular conflict or incident that happened, that situation that occurred with, I don't know, the in-laws or the friends, or however it went that went badly or poorly, and then conflict arise, right? Or you're triggering your partner or doing something that caused your partner to become angry or upset, and then that comes towards you. So noticing that, right? So that you can get better and better at doing the work with yourself, of meeting your own needs, of noticing when your abandonment wound gets triggered, because really that's at the core of so much of the conflict we experience, especially in our intimate or significant relationship or partnerships. And then practicing healing in the experience itself, right? And if you're not able to do that right away, and I certainly don't expect you to be able to, then getting better and better to giving yourself that space and time, bringing yourself away from the heatedness, right? To take space so you can allow yourself to feel the emotions in your body. And that's a very important practice, to practice letting yourself feel all, whether it's the frustration, the hurt, right? The pain of how those emotions are present in the body, right? By not going into the mind, letting the mind take over, or the ego, however you want to think of it, take over, by creating a story and projecting it onto the other or the situation or whoever fault the ego tends to love finding fault towards, and taking the responsibility to yourself, letting yourself feel it in the body, to feel the intensity or the heaviness of it, and then over time getting better and better, because you'll notice if you practice and allow yourself to do that, it doesn't last. That intensity doesn't last and remain, right? If you allow yourself to feel the emotions, it changes. Eventually it will dissipate. And after it dissipates, after it changes and there's more spaciousness, that's when the awareness, the learning, the wisdom can start to arise, right? The awareness of what was triggered and why that was triggered, right? And this does take time. It does take the willingness to keep meeting these situations in a different way. And then over time, you will start to gain a greater awareness, right? And then through that, that also gives the partner the opportunity to do their work, right? But the thing is not to have any expectation that he or she also needs to do their work, because it's their fault that continues to happen. No, it's about taking ownership and radical responsibility for your own state of being and your own experience, because this is what it is. It's all a reflection of your internal experience, of your internal relationships with the various parts of yourself, that we bring in all these situations and all these people and partners and relationships into our lives that recreates the same rhythms and dynamics and energies and patterns we experience as children with our caregivers, with our parents, etc., onwards in school, etc. And then we get the opportunity, right? You get the opportunity to start to practice anytime you notice yourself in discomfort, in heatedness, in conflict with another, right? To meet it differently and to do the learning and the growth and the maturation in the experience of itself. Or if you're not able to do it in the experience, then take space to allow yourself to feel, to accept whatever is present. And through being there, acceptance, surrendering to feeling it all, then that feeling gets transformed, space is created, and in the space, getting to do the work with yourself of recognizing what was triggered, what part of you felt unsafe or felt unseen or misunderstood, and you get to do the work of accepting that part of yourself, and of accepting more and more fully all parts of you, so that you can show up more whole, more as yourself throughout life, so that when conflict is experienced, when things come at you, you can meet it, right? Knowing that you have your own back, knowing that you know when it is your boundaries are crossed, and then you can own your self-worth, so that the reactions of others doesn't perturb that, doesn't stir that, doesn't cause you to diminish yourself, or your mind to take over. And that's what it means, right? This growth piece, to become more and more liberated and free in relationships. So let me know how this lands for you. I invite you to experiment.